A copy of this session will be available online to download in PDF version as well as video. These webinars are to enhance your knowledge of the Jonas software as a refresher for those individuals that have already taken training from a Jonas trainer. It should be used not as a substitute for training, but as a review. The webinars will be approximately 15 minutes of information with time at the end for questions, give or take how long the actual presentation takes. So I'm just going to go ahead and mute the lines unless anyone has any questions that they need to ask prior to starting.
I had a question. At the top of that, it said that we could write in a question if we had it, and I didn't see where to write that, where to do that.
There should be, in part of the window that you're looking at, there's a little icon with a bubble that says chat. And if you click on that, you should be able to type in a question.
I see it. Okay.
You got it?
Got it. Thank you.
Perfect. No problem. So today we'll be talking about charge codes. What is a charge code, how we're going to create a new charge code, when to create a new charge code, and how those codes link to billing and sales items. Also, we'll look at how to trace where a sales item or a billing item goes in the general ledger. So these are all functions that are really helpful for understanding the background of the software, understanding where things are going, GL allocations. If you're finding something's not going to the right place, how can we spot that and fix it? So what is a charge code? A charge code is a rule, it's a linkage, and it gets attached to sales items, billing items, and payment items. So the charge code acts as a rule for where the item should go in the general ledger account, if it should be taxed or not taxed, if it has gratuities or service charges or any combination of those three. So basically it's a setting that on every billing and sales item tells the system what GL do I go to, and am I taxed, or is there a service charge on me, is there a gratuity, is there an extra gratuity? So it's all the rules so that any time a transaction is processed in the system, whether it be at point of sale or back office, this charge code tells the system how to handle that. You generally only need one charge code per each revenue GL account. Now, sometimes you'll need charge codes that go to liability accounts for, say, unearned dues. When we bill those out and it doesn't go to the revenue account, we need a charge code to tell it to go to the liability. Sometimes you will have charge codes that are not linked to a revenue account. They could be expense accounts, but a general rule when we're first creating charge codes in our system is start by looking at your revenue accounts because you're likely going to need at least a charge code for all of those. A single charge code can be attached to numerous items where all the items in GL treatment. So what that means is I don't need a charge code for hamburger. I don't need a charge code for hot dog. I don't need a separate charge code for sandwich. If they all go to food sales or food revenue, I can use the same charge code behind all of those items. In the same way, if I have social dues, tennis dues, golf dues, and they all go to the same GL account and they all follow the same tax rules, then I can have one charge code that goes behind all three of those billing items. So charge codes are attached to billing items, sales items, and payment items, which basically are the three types of transactions that you could have in the system. Billing items are your back office functions, so billing out dues or assessments or lost card fee, anything that your office is billing out to members. Sales items refers to point of sale, so golf, tennis, in the restaurant, anything that is sold at point of sale. And payment items are reflected when a member pays their bill or if a member is paying at point of sale, whether it be cash, check, credit card, member charge. Behind all those payment items, there's also a charge code that again triggers the general ledger account to allocate that money to. When an item is sold or billed, the system knows which GL account to use because of the charge code that's linked to that billing or sales item or payment item. So the charge code is behind every single item that would occur in a transaction, and that's how the system knows what GL entry to post. When a billing item is billed in accounts receivable, Encore retrieves the rules or the charge code based on the billing category or group defaults. So the way the system works is with a hierarchy. So everything in the system, billing items, sales item, payment items, there's a group level, then a category level, and then the actual item itself. So for example, in point of sale, the group might be F&B food, the category would be F&B lunch sandwiches, and the sales item would be a turkey BLT. And so the charge code is actually attached at the group level, F&B food, which is very generic, and then it can be overridden on the category level, which could get a little bit more specific. And normally the sales item follows that category rule unless we choose to override it, which can be done so that a single item has an override or a specific charge code to that single item. But most of the time, the charge code that we set for the category applies to everything in it, because you don't typically have different general ledger accounts for lunch sandwiches. All lunch sandwiches would probably go to the same general ledger account, because you're not going to have a GL account specific to a turkey BLT. So when you're using that point of sale item, it's going to gather that charge code information from the category level. So when sales items are sold at POS, system will retrieve the rules based on the sales category group default. Same thing works with the billing item as well. So it always looks to the group level as the broadest, then it checks if there's an override charge code on the category level, and then it would check to see if there's an override charge code on the individual item. So the components of a charge code, so when we're setting up the charge code, are the charge type. So what kind of code is this? Is it a finance charge, sales charge, or payment? So payment is for a payment item specifically. Sales are either billing or point of sale items. That's a code. That's a sales type code, whether it's at point of sale or billing. And a finance charge, the majority of your charge codes will be for sales charge codes, because that's the majority of the transactions that are occurring in the system. The other part of the charge code is the receivable to use. So if you are a club that has multiple receivables, maybe AR house, AR dues, AR other, AR event. If you have multiple receivables, then you'll need to pick the receivable for that charge code, because that tells the system what account's receivable to trigger if you have multiple. If you only have one, then you're only going to have one option to choose, and that's the one you'll choose, just AR members. You'll also have to choose the reporting category. So this is, where am I categorizing the code? You'll choose the surcharge group. So the surcharge group is the combination of surcharges that should be impacted when an item is billed or sold using this code. So a surcharge group might be no tax, it might be tax only, it could be tax plus service charge or tax plus gratuity. So the surcharge group is what's happening, what are my rules on taxing and service charges. The finance charge rule indicates if I bill or sell this item and a member doesn't pay on time, do they calculate late fees on that charge? So some clubs, they may bill something back office, and if the member doesn't pay, they don't calculate late fees on it. So you wouldn't select the finance charge rule. But in 90% of the cases, if I charge a member, whether back office or point of sale, and they don't pay that charge, I need to calculate late fees. So that's what the finance charge rule accomplishes. Am I going to calculate a late fee if it's not paid on time? The voluntary gratuity code is optional, and that's if you're using extra gratuity on any items. This is mostly for food and beverage, and that's just a code to use if extra gratuity was applied. And then the last and most important step is the allocation to a GL account. So pick the GL account that this code represents. Now you can allocate a charge code to multiple GL accounts. Most of your charge codes will just be allocated to one, meaning when I sell this item, dump that transaction value into that account. But some clubs actually use multiple allocations behind one code. So for example, I've done a club where their dues are billed and a portion of it goes to one GL account and a portion goes to the other. Say for dues where a portion goes to a social dues GL and the other portion goes to golf dues. So behind the scenes, that charge code actually goes to two different spots. So you can break the charge code out by percentage. You only need to create a new charge code when you have a new billing or sales item that is treated differently than existing items. So if you're creating a new billing or sales item, what you want to think about before you go and create a charge code is, do I have other similar items in my system that go to the same place right now? Because if so, I don't need a new charge code. I can use an existing charge code. You're only going to need to create a charge code if that new item goes somewhere completely different in the general ledger or has different tax rules. So I'd say the majority of the time you do not need to create a new charge code because you should have something similar sitting out there unless it's a new back office billing, it's a new assessment that also has its own GL account for it. So in the example of a July family picnic lunch billing item, you'd create a billing item for this July picnic billing. The billing item needs a charge code behind it to tell it what GL that revenue should go to and whether it's taxable or service charge or gratuity. If there's not an existing charge code that points to the GL, then you need to create a new charge code. But there could be an existing charge code, say club event revenue, that already exists because you probably have, you know, Mother's Day brunch billing item or Halloween dinner or father-daughter dance. Those are all club events that go to the same general ledger account because chances are you don't have a July picnic lunch GL account. So this is where when you're creating that new billing item, you just want to see, do I have something similar that's already going to the GL account I need? Because if so, I don't need to make a new charge code. If you create a new charge code and you didn't need to, it's not going to harm anything. It's just kind of going to plug up your system with extra charge codes that you don't really need. And so you don't want to maintain a system with all of these extra charge codes and junk, if I can put it that way, because it's just clutter in the system. So a best practice when we create the charge code is to use the GL account code as the charge code's code, and then the GL account description as the description. So this will help you in knowing the GL allocation just by looking at the charge code and in charge code reporting. So what this means is when we create the charge code, it's going to ask you for the code and a name for it. Make the code the actual GL number, because then any time you look at that charge code, you don't need to go investigate where does this charge code point to. You can just look at the code, and that tells you the general ledger. So you can see here on this screen the charge code 1234B facility fee, and the description is the exact same thing. So both the charge code and the description of the code tell me right away what GL account I'm triggering. There's no, I don't have to go to that allocations tab in the bottom portion of this screen. I don't have to go there to see where it goes. The charge code tells me where it goes just by looking at it. So that will save you time when you're applying charge codes or if you need to look up a billing item and see where it's going, because just looking at the code tells you where it's going. So to create these charge codes, you will go to System Admin, Setups, Charge Codes. Okay, so it's a setup found in the System Admin module. You'll click on that, and you'll see the grid of your existing charge codes. And you'll click New to create a new charge code. So you'll need the code, you'll need the description, and again, the description should not be the item that you're going to put this charge code behind, like July picnic. It should be generic and describe the general ledger, banquet food. Then you'll pick the charge type, sales, finance charge, or payment. Again, most often you're going to be doing it for a sales charge type. Pick the receivable if you have multiples, the surcharge group, the finance charge, and the allocation to the GL account, which is in that second tab. So once you have created the charge code, you're done that process, and now you just need to attach that charge code to a sales or billing item, depending on what you're creating. So again, the sales and billing items are grouped in a hierarchy. So they're a group, category, and then the item. So every sales or billing item belongs to a category, which belongs to a group. So the charge code is attached at the group level, the highest level, for the default code. Yes, 90% of your items might not follow that default code, but we still set a default at the group level. That means if I don't do anything else, any items within that group will go to this spot. Then you can override the charge code at the category level and again at the individual item level if required. So most of the time I see clubs with charge codes at the category level, because often when we're creating billing or sales items, it's at that category level that you start to branch off where things go to different general ledger accounts. And then sometimes you will have a specific override on the item level. For the example of point of sale, food and beverage, most of the time your charge code is going to be at the category level where you'll have a default. So again, an example, lunch sandwiches, on that category you would have a charge code, and that would go to food sales. Or on the category of non-alcoholic beverages, that would go to beverage sales. Or the category of red wine bottles, that would go to your wine sales. It's not necessary for me to attach another charge code override on the individual glass of wine that I'm selling, or on the turkey BLT that I'm selling, or on the glass of orange juice, because all those items belong to the category, and everything in that category goes to the same spot. There's no need to put in a charge code on the individual item itself. It can inherit the rule from the category. So when you're attaching the charge code, At the group level, it's in the defaults tab. Okay, so this is also how you could trace where are my sales items or billing items going in the GL. So this screen is in the sales item group tab, and it's on the default tab. And you can see here the sales charge code is wine sales. So this means that anything in this group, if I did nothing else, anything in this group is going to wine sales. You can also set a different default charge code to use for different sales areas if you have GL allocations based on where it's sold. So you can see down below, I don't in this example, but I could have different charge codes based on if my wine was sold on the beverage cart, in events, in the main dining room, or the snack bar. So where the charge code for the group is different from the charge code for a category, you can override. So at the category, so sales item categories in the point of sale tab, there's a flag called overrides, and you can override the group settings and select the charge code to use for this category. So the override flag is on, and then we would pick the new code down there. So that would be the case maybe where you have on the group level wine sales, but you actually do break it down by category, bottled versus glass wine sales. Not really common, but it could happen. So therefore, the default code is just wine sales, but on the category for wine glasses, red and white, you would override it to say, go to my GL for wine glass sales. Same example that I used for the lunch examples, beverage examples. Then, breaking down that hierarchy one step further, where the charge code used for the category is different from the specific item in the category, you can do an item override. So on the actual sales item, in POS sales items, on the override tab, so what we're looking at right here, you can say override the category settings, which means forget what I assigned at the category level, this item goes somewhere different. Okay? Sometimes this might be used, for example, if you have a corkage fee. So on your wine sales item group, you said it goes to wine sales. On the category, you didn't do an override. All of your wine categories, red, white, glass bottle, they all go to wine sales. But the individual item of corkage fee, you don't consider wine sales, you consider that other income or something else. This is where you would have an item override because the corkage fee is a sales item within a category, and that corkage fee doesn't follow the default coding or the default pattern where everything else is going. So you can do an override on that single item for it to go somewhere else. So as mentioned, a charge code tells the sales item in POS or the billing item in back of house being charged what GL account to affect when we're posting a journal entry, if it gets tax or service charge or gratuity, and if it is subject to a late fee if unpaid. So it acts as the rule behind an item. So if an item is not charging to the correct account, so if you're running your end of day and you're doing food and beverage end of day and you see tennis income on your GL posting and you're going, I'm running food and beverage, why am I seeing tennis income? This is where there is somewhere along the lines that the charge code is incorrect. Or if you're going to post a billing item to record charges and charge a member for something and the general ledger summary does not look like the revenue that you're trying to post, we need to check the charge code. Same thing if an item's not properly calculating tax, or if you're in the record charges billing something out and it's not calculating tax on an item. We need to go back to that charge code and make sure that it's set up properly, that the charge code attached to the item has the right tax rules on it. So where are my items going? How can I look at this on a broad scale rather than going one by one item and only, noticing if something's wrong when it goes wrong? You can actually do an export of items, and this will help validate the setups that you have in the system. So you can check the general ledger account that your sales or billing items are being put into. You can check your tax rules on those items. So it'll actually tell you the charge code that's attached to every sales item and billing item. So this is a new feature that requires version of 14.2 or later, so most clubs should be on 15.3 by now, so this shouldn't be a problem in terms of having access to this. So under System Administration, under Tools, you'll see this Setup Validation Export. and then you can do an export of your sales items and billing items, and that will give you data as to what charge codes are attached to that. Now, for sales items, that will be a huge Excel export, a lot of lines to go through one by one, but it is worth the time if you're finding that a lot of things are not going to the right spot. Billing items normally have a little less billing items than we do for sales items, but same thing, it will be an export to Excel, and it will give you a grid of all of your sales and billing items and where they're going in the general ledger. And so this is an easy way to kind of tackle and review your billing items. This is a good practice to do at least once a year, to make sure that if you've done new setups throughout the year, maybe someone who wasn't sure what they were doing has created new sales or billing items and there's a bunch of things going to the wrong spot, this is a great tool to be able to go through and confirm and validate that all of your items are going to the correct allocation or the correct charge code. So the charge code export is another export that we can get that lists all of your charge codes and their settings. So it's just a way to review charge codes in case you've named a charge code something and it doesn't go to where the name says it goes to. The sales item export will list all your sales items and their properties, the category it belongs to. There's different settings. You can turn on flags to choose which information you want to export, and you can actually list the charge code attached to the sales items. So that's a way to check what are the charge codes attached to these sales items. And it will tell you if it's derived from the default or if it's an override. What that means is, okay, if my hot dog is going to this charge code, did I get that from the default category, or is there an override on the hot dog itself? And that can also trigger review of, okay, why is there an override on a hot dog? Because it shouldn't go anywhere differently than everything else in the category it belongs to. So this is what it would look like here when you do your sales item export, include charge information, and then other options down at the bottom. So you can include pricing, that will tell you the price. It's also a good tool for managers to review food and beverage, golf, make sure their pricing is correct. Include sales area restrictions, where it can be sold, whether it applies to minimums, prep options, menu usage will tell you where it is on a menu. Include only active items is a good flag. If you have inactive items, I don't want to see them on the report. So some good settings in here. Again, it will be a very large Excel report, but it is worth the time to go through. Billing item, very similar to your sales item export. It will list all of your billing items and their properties. So you can choose whether you want to show all your charge code links or only to show those that vary from the default. So if my billing item follows the default on the category level, I shouldn't really care because it's following the default and I don't need to know anything otherwise. Just show me ones that have overrides, because if it has an override, it should be overridden for a specific reason. So show me that so that I can look at all the billing items that have an override and make sure that those overrides are correct. Exports of charge codes and sales billing items are very useful, as mentioned. Can verify your correct setup and modify where required, and it can identify overrides. Why do I have an override on this item? So it's a way of pinpointing or highlighting items that may not be set up correctly. So an example that I have here, Coke, Sprite, Dasani water, sold at point of sale, they all go to the same GL account, beverage sales, and they get taxed 5%. Therefore, we would create a charge code that goes to beverage sales that has a surcharge group 5% tax. That charge code then gets attached to all three sales items, Coke, Sprite, Dasani water. So I don't need three charge codes because Coke, Sprite, and Dasani are all non-alcoholic beverages that all go to beverage sales and all are taxed 5%. Here's another example in terms of billing items. July picnic, summer barbecue, winter ball. So all these are billed in the back office. They all dump into the same general ledger, club events. They all have 5% tax and 18% service charge. Therefore, I need one charge code that goes to the GL club events that has a surcharge group, 5% tax, and 18% service charge. And then this charge code gets attached to all three billing items. I do not need three charge codes. There are three different billing items, yes, but if they all go to the same account and they all have the same tax, service charge, and gratuity properties, then I can use the same charge code behind all three items. So just a summary to recap what a charge code is, it's a rule. So I kind of think of it like a package. It's a container that holds a bunch of different settings, and then that is attached behind a sales or billing or payment item. So this package or this charge code contains your rules for the GL allocation, the taxes, service charges, or gratuities, if applicable, and the finance charge rule, if applicable. Once you create a charge code, it can be attached to any POS sales item or billing item and multiple times. So that brings up another good point is that I can have a charge code and I could use that for a point of sale item and I could also use it for a billing item. So for example, maybe I have a charge code for food sales and I use that for my point of sale items, sandwiches, pizza, pasta, that's food sales. I can use that same charge code behind a billing item that's called Friday night dinner that I bill back office, because Friday night dinner is taxed the same, it has the same service charge, and it's food sales. So I still only need one charge code. So charge codes are not specific to point of sale or billing items. They're universal. It can be used for any or both. So that brings me to the questions part. So I'm going to unmute the lines, and if you have any questions, you can let me know. We can go into the software a little bit if we need further clarification there. So does anyone have any questions in regards to charge codes, setups, billing items, sales items, and how they relate to charge codes? Nope.
I think the only thing that I just haven't done those exports, so I want to see how they come out. And you're saying that they're really big documents, but easy to go through and see where some issues are?
Yep, I can do a sample one here just so that you can see what the spreadsheet would look like and we can walk through the components. So again, it's under System Admin Tools. I'm going to do billing item because I should have less in this one, otherwise it would be a little too large. It is a lot to look at, and some people will look at it and kind of go, oh my God, that's a lot to go through. But even if you go through it over the course of a week, honestly, it's a big help because it's, instead of waiting for something to get billed and go to the wrong spot, you're tackling it before that happens, so it is worth it. So when you're doing a billing item export, you can choose what charge code information, only list items with overrides on the category or item level, or only list items with overrides on the item level, or just show me all charge codes. So what that would be used for is basically like highlight where I have an override on versus just show me everything. I don't care if it has an override or not. I want to see everything. And then the surcharges, only list them if there's a surcharge override, which means I've overridden certain items to say, no, that item doesn't follow the rule and it gets a special tax or gratuity. I normally leave these both to all. I still want to see where everything's going. Then you can choose if you want to show discount information, sales area restrictions, so that would show you where the item can be billed. Minimums is if it applies to minimums, include active items. Repeat that on all lines. That's so that if you have a billing item that could be billed in multiple sales areas, it won't leave gaps in your data. So I'm going to turn that on just so you can see what that would look like. And then in step 2, you select which billing item categories you want to pull from. So I can just do a right click and do select all, and then hit export. So if you just wanted to do one at a time, you could do that. And then so that will save as Excel, and then it will prompt you to open it when you're finished. Okay, so you can see here the quick access code, the description, the billing category that it belongs to, and whether it's active. Okay, so that's just your basic information of billing items. And then we go over to the charge code that is attached. So what you see here is where it says source. That means it gets its charge code from the item itself.
Okay.
If it says group, it means it gets the charge code from the group level. If it said category, it would get it from the category level. The sales area just says whatever default sales area comes from the category, that's where it can be billed. That's what default means. So if you see default anywhere, it means it can be billed anywhere that the administration category says it can be billed. Then it will give you the name of the charge code and the GL allocation, and then percentage. So if you have a multi-percentage allocation, it would have 2 lines. So what you're looking for here to kind of point out where you could find anomalies is you're looking wherever you see the source being an item, that can be like let's make sure it's correct, because I've obviously flagged this one on the item level to do an override. I'm just going to see if I can find. So this one says it gets it from the category level. So again, you just want to look through and say, okay, well, these all belong to the same category. Do they all go to the GL account? Because that's what I'm saying here, is they all go to the same place if it's getting it from the category level. But then you can see this one has been overridden. Yep.
How do you see that it's overwritten?
Like here, so see how this is auction event belongs to the foundation, and it's getting from the category, but this one gets it from the item. It still belongs to the same category, but its code is on the item level.
Okay. All right, yep. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what you're looking for. Again, this one's not too bad just because it's our billing items. Where you see this, so see how I have like F&B promo comp, and I have it listed 12 times. The reason this is listed 12 times is because it can be billed through multiple sales areas. So that we don't show it here. It's just saying that it can be billed through multiple sales areas based on this category. That's why you're seeing it listed multiple times. And that's because I said repeat info on all lines. So that's why I'm seeing it repeated like that. So you can always just do a find and eliminate those. So this one's not too bad, again, because it's billing items. It's more manageable. The sales items would be a little bit larger.
Sure.
But again, it does give you the geolocation. And then if we scroll over again, it'll also tell you the surcharges that are being used. Okay. Oh. And then it'll tell you if there's any sales area restrictions, and then it will tell you if there's any minimums and what minimums apply. Okay. If so. So again, the most important pieces that you're looking here is this surcharge group and the GL allocation. That's really what you're making sure that, okay, yep, that billing item is not taxable and it goes to the account 1400. That is not taxable and it goes to the rental fees general ledger. So that's what you're looking for, is you're making sure that the GL allocation and the surcharge is correct. If you find that it is not correct, you're going to go to that billing item and start from that item level and then work backwards from the item to the category to the group to fix it. So if we realize that annual dues is not going to the correct spot, if I go to this overrides, I can see here I have an override on the category level. I picked specifically what it is. If that's not correct, I can drop down this menu and choose what is, and I can type either a word or I can type a number to search for it. Okay, if I didn't have an override on the category, I could uncheck that box and you can see this is where it would go. It's already going there, so technically I don't even need an override on here because the category itself is already going there. So that's a setup item that actually is incorrect. The way that one is we don't need an override on the item level if it follows the category. Now on this one, the annual slip dues, this one we do need an override because if I take that override off, meaning it takes the category code, it's going to the wrong spot. So that's where a category would be required and do an override on the item level. So that's where you would correct it if it's wrong. Now if I'm just going to try and find something that's not. Okay, so this one here, refund credit on account. So if you go to this one here, it doesn't have an override. So if I'm realizing, okay, this one's wrong, I can trace it all the way back. So it belongs to the administration category. So I would go back to my billing item category. I'd make sure, okay, is there anything overridden here? No, it's taking everything from the group level. So you can trace it backwards that way and find out where the charge code is set, which is the category level. And if that's not correct, then you would put an override on here and search for, you know, whatever the charge code should be, and all you do is hit save, and that now would correct that.
And it's only going from this point forward. It doesn't retro.
Correct. It doesn't retroactive anything. If you have billed this in the past, it's not going to change anything in the past. So if you have posted something in error to the wrong spot via record charges or something like that, you will have to go back and make a journal entry out of the wrong account and into the correct one.
And then the format of that Excel file that you have, is that a canned report that your developers created?
Yeah, there is no modifying how this exports other than repeating the info on each line. Just
your options when you actually request it. Okay.
Yep. So the settings that you choose dictate how many columns you have. So that's what the billing item one looks like. The sales item looks similar, just much larger. And again, I would say those two are your most frequently or most helpful reports, but you can also do payment item report, the charge code export, and also the fee billing export, which are your fixed item billings. And that same way that works for your billing items, except that will give you detail of the schedule that your fee billings are on, the amounts, if there's any overrides in the charge code. So all of these are good tools to use, like I said, at least once a year to go through these and make sure that, you know, everything still aligns properly. But if you do find that you're running end of days or you're posting record charges and something looks off in the journal entries, then a good place to start is to go find that item, figure out, okay, do I have an override on? Should there be an override on? And that's the point that you can start fixing it and working backwards. You always want to start at the item level and then work back to the category and the group if necessary.